Rain began to fall over the quiet little town. Inside his old bike shop, an elderly black mechanic worked silently. Then crack, a sudden sound broke the stillness. Outside, a skinny boy clutched a torn delivery bag, lying beside his bent bicycle in the flooded street. Alarmed, the old man rushed out, brought the boy inside, gave him food, and repaired his bike for free. He had no idea that 15 years later, when he was sick, broke, and left with nothing, that same boy would come back and change his life forever. Before we continue, tell us what time it is where you are watching from, and don't forget to subscribe. Something special is coming tomorrow. Spring 2008, light afternoon, Riverside District. The wind moved across Henderson Street like a tired sigh, carrying with it the smell of rain and exhaust fumes, and something else, the quiet loneliness of a neighborhood that used to matter. Tom Miller's bicycle repair shop sat wedged between two glass towers, a relic from another era when this street hummed with life. The shop wasn't much, just a narrow space with cracked walls, a workbench scarred by decades of use, and tools hanging on pegboard like old friends waiting to be called on. The sign above the door had faded so badly you could barely read Miller's Repairs anymore. Most days, people walked right past without seeing it. Without seeing him. Tom was 73 years old, a black man with silver hair cropped close to his skull and hands that had fixed more bicycles than he could count. Deep lines carved his face, not from bitterness, but from years of squinting at brake cables and gear systems, from smiling at customers who no longer came, from carrying weight that wasn't his to carry but he carried anyway. He moved slow now. Not from laziness. Tom Miller had never been lazy a day in his life, but from necessity. His back complained with every bend. His knees popped when he stood. Arthritis had settled into his fingers like unwelcome tenants, making them shake sometimes, making simple tasks feel monumental. But he showed up. Every morning at 7. Every evening until 6. 6 days a week, 52 weeks a year. The neighborhood had changed around him. Used to be you'd see kids riding bikes down this street, dodging potholes and laughing. Used to be people knew each other's names, stopped to talk, looked each other in the eye. Now everyone was in a hurry. Eyes on phones, earbuds in, moving fast towards something important, something that definitely wasn't an old man fixing bicycles in a shop that time forgot. Inside, everything had its place. Wrenches organized by size, spare chains coiled like sleeping snakes in plastic bins, tires stacked against the back wall, some new, most used, all waiting for someone who needed them. In the corner sat Tom's wooden stool, worn smooth from 3 decades of use. Beside it, a photograph in a cracked frame. Clara, his wife, 41 years they'd had together. The photo showed her in a yellow sundress, standing in their backyard, smiling like she knew a secret the rest of the world hadn't figured out yet. That smile could light up the darkest room. That's what Tom had always said. She'd been gone 6 years now. Cancer came quick, too quick. 3 months from diagnosis to funeral. Tom still wore his wedding ring, still talked to her sometimes when the shop was empty and the silence got too heavy. Another slow day, he'd say to the photograph. Clara never answered back, but he felt her there anyway. In the way the light hit the workbench, in the smell of oil and metal, in the quiet satisfaction of fixing something broken and making it whole again. Around noon, Tom's stomach rumbled. He set down his wrench and walked to the small refrigerator humming in the corner. Inside was a brown paper bag with his lunch, a turkey sandwich he'd made that morning, an apple going soft, a bottle of water. Same thing every day, simple, enough. He sat on his stool and unwrapped the sandwich. The bread was a little dry. He'd forgotten to add mayo. But it was food, and food was fuel, and fuel kept you moving. He ate slowly, chewing each bite thoroughly the way his mother had taught him 70 years ago. The bell above his door hadn't rung all day. That happened more and more lately. Whole days where nobody came, where Tom sat alone with his tools and his memories and the photograph of Clara, waiting for someone who needed help. Sometimes he wondered if the world had finally decided it didn't need men like him anymore. Men who fixed things with their hands. Men who believed a firm handshake and honest work meant something. But then Clara's voice would echo in his head, clear as day, "You quit when you're done, Tom Miller." Not a moment before. So he didn't quit, he showed up. He waited. He hoped. Outside, the sky was darkening. Storm clouds rolled in thick and low, turning the afternoon light gray and heavy. Tom walked to the window and looked out. People were hurrying now, trying to beat the rain. A young couple jogged past, laughing. A businessman clutched his briefcase and quickened his pace. Nobody looked at Tom's shop. Nobody ever did. He was about to turn away when he saw it. A kid on a bicycle, maybe 12 years old, skinny as a rail, pedaling hard against the wind. The bike looked too big for him, and he had something strapped to his back, a large insulated delivery bag, the kind restaurants use. It was throwing him off balance, making the bike wobble with every gust of wind. Tom watched. Something about the way the kid rode, desperate, determined, fighting, made him pay attention. The first drops of rain hit the window. Big cold drops that exploded against the glass like tiny fists, then more. Then it wasn't rain anymore. It was a downpour, sudden and violent, turning the street into a river in seconds. The kid kept pedaling, head down, one hand on the handlebars, the other trying to shield his face from the rain. Tom stood at the window, hands pressed against the glass. "Get inside, son," he muttered. "Storm's not worth it." But the kid kept going, kept fighting. Water streamed down his face, his thin jacket soaked through instantly. The delivery bag on his back pulled him sideways with every movement. Then it happened. The front wheel hit something, a pothole hidden under the water, filled and invisible. The impact was brutal. The bike jerked hard to the left. The delivery bag's weight threw everything off balance. For one suspended moment, the kid seemed to hang in the air, arms windmilling, trying desperately to stay upright. Then he went down. Hard. The boy hit the pavement hip first, then shoulder, then his head snapped back against the concrete with a sound that made Tom wince even through the glass. He skidded across the wet street, the bike clattering beside him, metal scraping asphalt. The delivery bag flew off his back and tumbled into the gutter, bursting open. White takeout containers spilled everywhere, food mixing with rainwater, washing into the storm drain. The kid lay there for a second, not moving. Just a small crumpled shape in the middle of the street, rain hammering down on him. Tom didn't think. He grabbed his old raincoat from the hook by the door, the one Clara had bought him 15 years ago, patches on the elbows, zipper that stuck, and pushed outside. The rain hit him like a cold slap. Within 3 steps he was soaked. The water was frigid, seeping through his clothes, finding every gap. His hip screamed in protest as he moved, but he ignored it, pushed through it. Kept going. The kid was trying to sit up now, moving slow, clearly hurt. Tom could see his hands, scraped raw, bleeding, his jeans torn at the knee. Face twisted not just in pain but in something worse, devastation. Tom reached him and knelt down on the wet pavement. His knees popped loud enough to hear over the rain. He put a hand out, gentle, not touching yet, just close. "Hey there, son," he said. His voice warm despite the cold, rough but kind. "You hurt bad." The boy looked up. His eyes were brown and wide and terrified. Rain streamed down his face, mixing with what might have been tears. His whole body shook, from cold, from shock, from fear, maybe all three. He opened his mouth but nothing came out at first. Just a strangled sound. Then finally, "The orders." His voice broke on the word. He wasn't looking at Tom. He was looking at the gutter, where the last of the food was disappearing into the drain. His thin chest heaved, his scraped hands curled into fists. "The orders are ruined. They're gonna fire me. My mom." He couldn't finish. Just put his face in his bleeding hands and shook. Tom's heart cracked right down the middle. He'd seen this before. Seen it in the mirror 30 years ago when his own father died and he had to become the man of the house at 14. Seen it in Clara's eyes when the medical bills piled up and she'd insisted on working through the pain because they needed the money. Seen it 1,000 times in this neighborhood, people carrying weight that would break most folks, carrying it anyway because they had no choice. This wasn't just a kid who fell off a bike. This was a kid holding his whole world together with both hands, and those hands were bleeding now. "Easy now," Tom said softly. "Let me see those hands." The boy slowly lowered them. The palms were scraped bad, road rash, deep and angry red, bits of gravel embedded in the skin. They'd hurt for days. "What's your name, son?" The boy sniffled, wiped his nose with the back of his wrist. "Charlie. Charlie Evans." "All right, Charlie. I'm Tom." He smiled, gentle, warm, like a grandfather talking to a scared grandkid. "Here's what we're gonna do. First, we're getting you out of this rain before you freeze to death. Second, we're gonna look at that bike. Third, we're gonna figure out the rest. Sound good?" Charlie's lip trembled. "But the food can't change what already happened," Tom said simply. "But we can change what happens next. Come on now. Up you go." He held out his hand. Charlie hesitated, pride and shame fighting behind his eyes. Then he took it. Tom pulled him up slowly, carefully. The boy was so light, too light. When he tried to put weight on his left leg, he gasped and nearly went down again. Tom caught him, steadied him. "I gotcha. Lean on me." With his free hand, Tom picked up the mangled bicycle. It was cheap metal, bent in ways that would make most mechanics shake their heads and walk away. But Tom didn't walk away. Never had. "Come on, Charlie. Just a few steps. Shop's right there." They moved together through the rain, an old man and a broken boy, both soaked, both hurting, both still standing. The storm raged around them, indifferent and cold, but Tom's hand on Charlie's shoulder was warm. And that right then was enough. Same day, 4:30 p.m. Inside the shop, water pooled on the floor. As they crossed the threshold, Tom guided Charlie to the wooden chair near the workbench, helping him sit. The boy winced as he lowered himself down, favoring his left side. His wet clothes clung to his skinny frame, making him look even smaller than he was. Tom set the destroyed bicycle against the wall and turned to look at Charlie properly. The kid was in bad shape, soaked to the bone, shivering hard, hands bleeding, one knee torn up through his jeans. But it was his face that got Tom, that hollow, desperate look, like the world had just kicked him while he was already down, and he was trying not to show how much it hurt. "Hold tight," Tom said. He went to the back corner where he kept a small first aid kit and a space heater that barely worked. He plugged in the heater, angled it toward Charlie, then brought over the kit. Inside, antiseptic, gauze, tape, a few bandages Clara had packed in there years ago. "Let me see those hands, Charlie." The boy held them out, palms up. They were worse up close, scraped raw, blood mixing with rain water, bits of street embedded in the wounds. Tom had seen plenty of injuries over the years, but something about these small young hands all torn up made his throat tight. "This is gonna sting," Tom warned. His voice was gentle but honest. "Won't lie to you about that. But we gotta clean them out, or they'll get infected." Charlie nodded, jaw set, trying to be brave. Tom worked slowly, carefully. He poured antiseptic over the wounds. Charlie hissed through his teeth but didn't pull away, then used gauze to dab away the dirt and blood. His old hands, shaky as they were, moved with practiced precision, each touch deliberate, each movement gentle. "You're doing good, son. Real good." When the wounds were clean, Tom wrapped both hands in fresh gauze and taped them secure. Not perfect, but functional. The boy could still move his fingers. "There, that'll hold. Thank you," Charlie whispered. His voice was hoarse. Tom stood with a grunt, his knees complaining, and went to the back again. He found what he was looking for, an old hoodie he kept hanging on a hook for cold days. It was faded too big, but it was dry and warm. "Take off that wet jacket and put this on. Don't be shy now." Charlie hesitated. Pride again, that stubborn foolish pride that hunger and shame teach you. "Go on," Tom said, turning away to give him privacy. "Ain't no sense sitting there freezing when you don't have to." Behind him, Tom heard the rustling of wet fabric being peeled off, the soft sound of the hoodie going on. When he turned back, Charlie was drowning in it, sleeves past his hands, hemmed down to his knees, but he'd stopped shivering quite so hard. "Better?" "Yes, sir." Tom nodded, and turned his attention to the bicycle. He lifted it onto the workbench and examined it under the overhead light. The damage was extensive. Front fork bent, wheel completely destroyed, spokes snapped, rim warped beyond repair, chain off and tangled in the gears. Handlebars twisted at different angles like broken arms. Most mechanics would call this totaled. Not worth the time, not worth the parts. But Tom wasn't most mechanics. "This your bike?" he asked, not looking up. "No sir, it's the restaurant's. Over on 5th, I work there." Tom glanced back. "You're what, 12? Almost 13, defensive, and you're making deliveries?" Charlie looked down at his bandaged hands. "I wash dishes mostly, but Miguel got sick today, and they needed someone, and his voice dropped. "They said they'd pay me extra." Tom turned back to the bike, jaw tight. A 12-year-old kid washing dishes, then getting sent out on deliveries in a storm on a bike that should have been jumped years ago. And now he'd take the blame for it. "Where's home, Charlie?" "Maple Grove Apartments, above the pawn shop on 3rd. "Your folks there?" The boy's face changed, closed up. "My mom. She works 2 jobs. Day shift at the Grand Hotel cleaning rooms, night shift at Martin's grocery stocking shelves. My dad," he swallowed hard. "He died 4 years ago. Heart attack." Tom stopped working, turned to look at the boy. Really look at him. Charlie wasn't meeting his eyes, just staring at his wrapped hands like they held answers they didn't have. "So it's just you and your mom. And my little sister, Lily. She's 4. Jesus." Tom felt something heavy settle in his chest. This kid, this child, was trying to be the man of the house at 12 years old, working after school, making deliveries in storms, probably going hungry so his little sister could eat. Tom knew that weight, had carried it himself once. "Your mama know you're out here?" Charlie shook his head. "She thinks I'm washing dishes. If she knew they sent me out in this." His voice cracked. "She's gonna be so mad. Not 'cause she's mean. She's tired, you know. She works so hard, and I just wanted to help, and now I messed it all up." His shoulders started shaking. Not from cold this time. From everything breaking at once. Tom set down his wrench and walked over. He didn't say anything, didn't try to fix it with words. Just stood there, close enough that Charlie knew he wasn't alone. After a moment, the boy wiped his eyes with the heel of his bandaged hand. "Sorry, nothing to be sorry for." Tom's voice was firm but warm. "You're carrying a lot, Charlie. More than you should have to. Crying don't make you weak, makes you human." Charlie looked up at him. In those red-rimmed eyes, Tom saw himself at 14. Saw every kid who'd ever had to grow up too fast. "You hungry?" Tom asked. "I don't have money." "Didn't ask if you had money." Tom walked to his small cooler and pulled out the wrapped half sandwich he'd saved. He brought it over and held it out. "Turkey. Bread's a little dry, but it's food." Charlie stared at the sandwich like it was something precious. "That's yours. Had my half already." Tom pressed it into the boy's hands. "And I can't fix your bike right if I'm worrying about you passing out from hunger, so eat." "That's an order." The smallest hint of a smile touched Charlie's face. "Yes sir." He unwrapped the sandwich slowly, reverently, then took a bite. His eyes closed for just a second, that unconscious relief when your body gets what it desperately needs. He chewed slowly, trying to make it last. Tom went back to the bicycle. He worked methodically, hands moving through familiar motions. Remove the broken wheel. Check the frame for cracks. There weren't any, thank God. Start straightening the fork. His fingers knew what to do, even when his mind wandered. Behind him he could hear Charlie eating. Quiet, careful, like he was afraid the sandwich might disappear if he wasn't gentle with it. The rain continued its assault on the windows. Thunder rumbled closer now. The world outside was gray and cold and unforgiving. But inside the shop, under the single overhead light, there was warmth, there was work, there was an old man who hadn't forgotten what it felt like to need help, and a young boy learning that sometimes, just sometimes, the world had kindness left in it after all. "How'd you learn to fix bikes?" Charlie asked after a while. Tom smiled without looking up. "My daddy taught me. Back when I was about your age. He had a shop too, different neighborhood, but same idea. He used to say fixing things was important work, not cause of money. There are easier ways to make a living, but cause when you fix something for someone, you're showing them they matter, that somebody cares enough to help." Was he right? Tom paused, considering. Yeah, he was right. Worlds full of people ready to throw things away the minute they break, but taking time to repair something, to make it work again, That's different. That's saying this person is worth the effort. Charlie was quiet for a moment. Then my dad used to fix things too. Toilets, sinks, whatever broke in our building. He never charged people, said we're all in this together. Sounds like a good man. He was the best. Charlie's voice went soft. When he died, everything got harder. Not just cause of money, but cause, I don't know, he made things feel possible, you know, like we could handle anything. You're handling it now, Tom said. You and your mama both. That takes strength, Charlie. Real strength. Doesn't feel strong. Strength never does. Not when you're in the middle of it. They fell into companionable silence. Just the sound of tools on metal, rain on glass, the occasional rumble of distant thunder. Tom worked for over an hour. The front fork couldn't be fully straightened. Metal had stress limits, but he got it close enough. The chain he untangled and cleaned. The handlebars he aligned. The real problem was the wheel. It was destroyed beyond repair. He set down his wrench and stood, stretching his aching back. Charlie, I gotta tell you straight. This front wheel's done. Can't fix it. But, he walked to his storage area in the back. A cramped space filled with parts he'd accumulated over decades. After some digging, he found what he needed. An old wheel from a different bike. Different era. It didn't match. The hub was a different color. The rim had some scratches, but it was solid. True. It would work. He brought it out. This'll fit. Won't be pretty, but it'll get you where you need to go. Charlie looked at it, then at Tom. How much? How much what? How much do I owe you? For the wheel, for your time, for Charlie. Tom's voice was gentle but firm. Listen to me, son. Sometimes people just help each other. No charge, no keeping score. Just one person seeing another person who needs help and deciding to help. Can you accept that? The boy's eyes filled with tears. Why, you don't even know me. Tom smiled, warm, sad, knowing, maybe. But I know what it's like to need help, and not have it. And I know what it means when somebody gives you a hand when you're down. He paused. Plus you remind me of me, trying to take care of your family, carrying weight that's too heavy. I remember that feeling. He turned back to the bike. Now let me finish this so you can get home before your mama worries. She doesn't know I'm gone. She's at work. Well, before your little sister worries then. Charlie smiled, small but real. Okay. Tom installed the mismatched wheel carefully, making sure everything was aligned and tightened properly. He checked the brakes, adjusted them, lubricated the chain, tested everything twice. When he was done, he stood the bike up and gave it a thorough inspection. It looked strange. The front wheel obviously didn't match. It was a Frankenstein bike, but it was safe, it was rideable, it would hold. All right. Tom rolled it over to Charlie. She's ready. Take it easy on corners at first. That wheel's gonna handle a bit different than what you're used to. Charlie stood and walked over, testing his injured leg. He could walk, but he'd be sore for days. He looked at the bicycle, ran his bandaged hand along the frame. You really fixed it. Did my best. I don't know how to thank you. Tom looked at him. This skinny, hurting, brave kid, who'd been dealt a bad hand but was still trying to play it right. You already did, Charlie. Just by being the kind of kid who cares about helping his family. That's enough. Charlie grabbed the handlebars, started walking the bike toward the door, stopped, turned back. Mr. Tom. Just Tom's fine. Tom, when I grow up, when I have money and can do something that matters. His young face was serious, determined. I'm gonna help people, like you helped me. I promise. Something in Tom's chest tightened. Not pain. Something else. Something like hope. You do that, Charlie. World needs more folks keeping promises like that. Charlie nodded, solemn, like he was taking a vow. Then he pushed the bike out into the rain, climbed on carefully, and rode off. The front wheel wobbled slightly but held. Tom stood in the doorway, rain misting his face, and watched until the boy disappeared around the corner. The street was empty again. The storm was passing, clouds breaking apart to show hints of evening light. The world moved on, indifferent. Tom turned back inside. The shop felt different somehow, less empty, like something had changed, though he couldn't say what. He walked to the workbench and picked up the photograph of Clara. I know what you're thinking. he said to her image. "You're thinking I'm a soft old fool." Her smile seemed to say, "No, I'm thinking you're exactly who I married." Tom smiled back, set the photo down gently, sat on his stool. Outside the rain stopped. The sun broke through, and for the first time in a long time, Tom Miller felt like maybe, just maybe, his work still mattered after all. Fall 2023. Late afternoon, Riverside District. 15 years is a long time in a city that never stops moving. Long enough for a boy to become a man. Long enough for a neighborhood to forget it ever had a soul. Long enough for hope to turn into something you used to believe in, back when belief came easy. Tom Miller stood on the corner of Henderson Street, but it wasn't his corner anymore. Nothing about this place was his. The shop was gone, demolished 8 months back, to make room for something called the Henderson Street Lifestyle Complex. Sounded fancy, looked expensive, felt empty. Where his workbench used to sit, there was now a juice bar with floor-to-ceiling windows and a menu written in chalk that cost more per drink than he used to charge to rebuild an entire bicycle. Where he used to greet customers, back when he had customers, there was now a parking meter and a bike rack full of $1,000 carbon fiber machines that would never need a man like him to fix them. The city had moved on. Tom had not. He was 88 now. The years hadn't just passed, they'd taken pieces of him with them. His shoulders hunched forward like he was carrying invisible weight. His left hip sent sharp pains up his spine with every step. The arthritis in his hands had gotten so bad some mornings he couldn't hold a coffee cup without it shaking. His face was thinner, more drawn. The silver in his hair had turned to white. His eyes, though, those still held something. Not hope exactly, more like stubborn refusal to disappear completely. He wore the same coat he'd worn for years, threadbare at the elbows, zipper broken, held together by 2 safety pins and determination. His shoes had holes in the soles. His pants hung loose on a frame that had lost too much weight too fast. He looked like what he was, a man the world had decided it didn't need anymore. The check they'd given him when they demolished his shop barely covered 3 months' rent in a new place. The new place was a studio apartment above a laundromat on the bad side of town, the side that used to be the only side, before gentrification came through like a hurricane and decided who got to stay and who had to go. His apartment smelled like mildew and dryer sheets and defeat. 1 room, a hot plate, a bathroom so small you had to step into the hallway to change your mind. A mattress on the floor. No photographs on the wall because the wall was water-stained and peeling and he didn't want Clara's picture looking at that. His social security check came once a month. After rent he had maybe $200 left. That had to cover food, utilities and everything else life threw at him. There was nothing left over for medicine. Nothing left over for the hip surgery his doctor said he desperately needed. Nothing left over for anything but survival, and some months' survival felt like too much to ask. He'd come back to Henderson Street today because he didn't know where else to go. The shelter didn't open until 6. The library closed at 5. That left him with an hour to kill, and nowhere to kill it. So he limped really back to the only place that had ever felt like home. But home didn't recognize him anymore. Tom stood across from where his shop used to be and stared at the shiny new building. A banner stretched across the front entrance, Even Soy Kills and Care Center grand opening today. He stared at the name, Evans. It stirred something in the back of his mind, something distant like a dream you can't quite remember when you wake up. But the feeling passed. There were probably 1,000 people named Evans in this city. It didn't mean anything. People were gathering for the opening. Expensive cars pulling up. Men in suits, women in heels. Camera crews setting up equipment. Someone was giving a speech through a microphone. Tom couldn't hear the words from across the street, but he could see the crowd nodding, applauding, celebrating. He wondered if any of them knew an old man used to fix bicycles right where they were standing. Probably not. Probably didn't matter. A gust of wind cut through his thin coat. He shivered. Winter was coming early this year. He could feel it in his bones, literally. Every joint ached. Every breath felt cold going down. He should leave. This wasn't his place anymore. These weren't his people. He was just a ghost haunting ground that had been paved over and built on top of and forgotten. But his feet wouldn't move. So he stood there invisible in the shadow of a building that used to be his whole world, watching strangers celebrate in the space where his life used to matter. That's when he saw the sign, small, tasteful. In the window of the new center, now hiring maintenance staff, Tom stared at it. His heart did something strange. Lurched, maybe. Or hoped. He wasn't sure he remembered the difference anymore. Maintenance staff, he could do that. He'd been maintaining things his whole life. Maybe they needed someone who knew their way around tools. Maybe they needed someone who understood that taking care of things mattered. Maybe, just maybe, there was still a place in this world for a man like him. Before he could talk himself out of it, Tom crossed the street. Each step sent pain shooting through his hip, but he gritted his teeth and kept going. He pulled open the glass door, heavy, new, the kind that whispers money when it moves, and stepped inside. The interior was overwhelming. Everything was white and chrome and gleaming, LED lights so bright they hurt his eyes. Polished concrete floors that reflected everything like a mirror. Rows and rows of bicycles, electric ones, expensive ones, the kind with digital displays and price tags that made his stomach turn. Music played softly from hidden speakers. The air smelled like new rubber and money and a future that didn't include people like him. Behind a sleek reception desk sat a young man, maybe 25, white, clean-cut, wearing a crisp shirt with even Swai Kills and Care Center embroidered over the pocket. His name tag said Durek, Assistant Manager. He was typing on a computer, fingers flying, completely absorbed. Tom approached slowly. His shoes squeaked on the polished floor. He felt suddenly acutely aware of how he must look, an old man in a broken coat, shoes with holes, smelling like the laundromat where he lived. Out of place. Out of time. "Excuse me," Tom said. His voice came out rougher than he intended. Derek didn't look up, just kept typing. Tom cleared his throat. "Excuse me, son." Derek sighed, the kind of sigh that said his time was valuable and being interrupted was an inconvenience. He glanced up, and Tom watched his expression change in real time. Mild annoyance shifted to assessment, shifted to barely disguised contempt. The young man's eyes traveled from Tom's face down to his worn-out shoes and back up again, cataloging every sign of poverty and age. "Can I help you?" Derek's tone said he'd rather not. "I saw the sign. About the maintenance position. I'd like to apply." Tom stood a little straighter, trying to summon whatever dignity he had left. For a moment Derek just stared, then he let out a short laugh, sharp, mean. "You're serious?" "Yes, sir. I worked with bicycles my whole life. 32 years I ran my own repair shop. I know every part, every system. I can fix." "Okay, stop." Derek held up a hand. "Let me explain something to you, Gramps. This isn't some janky repair shop. This is a state-of-the-art facility. We don't need someone who knows how to patch tubes and tighten spokes. We need someone who understands electric drive systems, computerized diagnostics, inventory management software. We need someone who can actually do the job. You even know how to use a computer." Tom's jaw tightened. "I can learn." "I'm sure you can." Derek's smile was cruel. "But we need someone who can start immediately. Someone who's not gone." He gestured vaguely at Tom, at his shaking hands, his hunched posture, his obvious poverty. "You understand what I'm saying?" "No." Tom's voice was quiet but firm. "I don't understand. What I understand is I'm a hard worker. Always have been. I show up on time. I do good work. I've been fixing bicycles since before you were born. Don't that count for something?" Derek leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, enjoying this now. "Look, old man, I'm gonna be straight with you because I'm a nice guy. This is a premium establishment. Our clients are professionals, young professionals, people who care about aesthetics, about image. You walking around here, looking like..." He waved his hand at Tom again. "It's not the vibe we're going for. It's not personal, it's just business. You get me?" Heat rose in Tom's face, not anger, not yet, shame. Deep, burning shame that made his eyes sting. He'd felt this before, but never quite like this. Never quite this naked, this dismissed. "I understand," Tom said. His voice sounded hollow. "Great, thanks for stopping by." Derek turned back to his computer, the conversation over. Tom stood there for a moment longer, rooted to the spot. Part of him wanted to argue, to defend himself, to point out that he'd forgotten more about bicycles than this kid would ever know. Part of him wanted to explain that he wasn't just some random old man, he'd built something here, right here, before this building existed. He'd helped people, he'd mattered, but what was the point? This kid had already decided who Tom was, what he was worth, nothing. Tom turned to leave, his vision blurred slightly, whether from shame or the too bright lights, he couldn't say. He just needed to get out, needed to breathe air that didn't feel like it was judging him. He was almost to the door when something on the wall caught his eye. He stopped. There, mounted on the wall like a piece of art, was a vintage bicycle, a Schwinn Paramount from the early 70s, beautiful chrome frame, classic lines, leather saddle worn smooth from years of use. It was the same model Tom had owned when he was young, the one he'd ridden everywhere, the one he'd loved, the one he'd sold to help pay Clara's medical bills. He walked over to it slowly, drawn by memory. His hand reached out, almost touched the frame, then stopped. He didn't want to leave fingerprints on something this clean. "That's a beautiful bike," Tom said softly, more to himself than anyone. Derek glanced up, annoyed again. "Yeah, the owner's really into vintage stuff, says it gives the place character. Does it still work, or is it just decoration?" "Dude, I don't know, it's just for show." "Why?" Tom shook his head slowly. "That's a 73 Paramount, hand-brazed frame, Reynolds 531 tubing. They don't make them like this anymore. This bike was built to last a lifetime. Built to be ridden, built to take people places." He paused, his voice dropping. "Seems wrong to hang it on a wall like a trophy when it was made for the road, made to mean something." Derek looked at him like he was speaking another language. "Bro, it's just a bike. It looks cool on the wall. That's literally the point." "No," Tom said quietly. "It's never just a bike." He turned and walked toward the exit. Each step felt heavier than the last. His hips screamed. His pride screamed louder. He was reaching for the door handle when Derek called out, "Yo, old man." Tom stopped, but didn't turn around. "You dropped something." Tom looked down. A few coins had fallen from his coat pocket, the last of his money, until his check came next week. 2 quarters, 1 dime, 3 pennies, 68 cents. He bent down to pick them up. It took effort. His knees cracked like breaking wood. His back protested every inch. The coins were hard to grasp with his shaking hands. Behind him he heard Derek snicker, a small sound, but sharp enough to cut. When Tom finally stood back up, it took 3 tries. His face was burning. He shoved the coins back in his pocket and pushed through the door without looking back. Outside, the afternoon sun felt harsh, judgmental. Tom stood on the sidewalk, breathing hard, trying to collect himself. People flowed around him like water around a stone, fast, efficient, completely unaware he existed. He'd been dismissed, humiliated, made to feel small, and the worst part, this wasn't even the first time this week, or this month. It was just the latest in a long grinding series of rejections that had become his new normal. Tom started walking. He didn't have a destination. The shelter wouldn't open for another 40 minutes. He just needed to move, needed to do something with the shame and anger churning inside him. 3 blocks away, he found a small park, one of the last green spaces the developers hadn't claimed yet. There was a bench under a dying tree, and Tom lowered himself onto it carefully. Every joint protested. Every muscle ached. He sat there, hands in his pockets, staring at nothing. Around him, the city moved. People jogging, parents pushing strollers, a couple having a picnic on the grass, laughing about something. Everyone had somewhere to be, someone to be with, something to look forward to. Everyone except him. For the first time in years, maybe decades, Tom Miller let himself wonder if it was all pointless. If kindness mattered at all in a world that only cared about money and youth and image. If showing up every day and doing good work meant anything when the world had decided you were obsolete. Clara used to say kindness was the only thing that didn't rust, that it outlasted everything else, that it mattered even when you couldn't see the results. Sitting on that bench, cold and broke and alone, Tom wasn't sure he believed that anymore. His phone buzzed in his pocket, an old flip phone held together with tape. He pulled it out. A text from the community center where he volunteered sometimes. "Hi Tom, Soup Kitchen needs help tomorrow, 10 a.m. if you're available. Hope you're doing well." Tom stared at the message. Tomorrow he was supposed to help serve food to people worse off than him. People who were homeless, hungry, barely hanging on. How could he help anyone when he couldn't even help himself? When he couldn't even get a job mopping floors? He closed the phone and put it back in his pocket. Maybe he'd go tomorrow. Maybe he wouldn't. Right now he just wanted to sit and let the world spin without him for a while. The sun moved lower. The shadows grew longer. The temperature dropped. Tom sat there, small and invisible, while the city celebrated its new cycling center and its bright future and all the progress that had left men like him behind. 1 week later, evening that Evans Cycles and Care Center. Desperation has a way of making choices for you. Tom stood outside the Evans Center again, hating himself for being here. His rent was due in 2 days. He was $43 short. His landlord had made it clear, no more extensions, no more sympathy, no more chances. Pay or get out. So here he was, back at the place that had humiliated him, because he'd heard from another man at the shelter that they needed someone for after-hours cleaning. $8 an hour. 3 nights a week, under the table, no questions asked. It was insulting. It was degrading. It was barely enough to make a difference. But it was something, and something was better than nothing. Better than the street. Tom pushed through the doors. The center was busier now. People looking at bikes, staff in white shirts helping customers, that same soft music playing from hidden speakers. Derek was at the reception desk, talking to another employee. When he saw Tom, his face lit up, not with welcome, but with the cruel pleasure of seeing someone desperate return to the scene of their humiliation. "You again?" Derek's voice carried across the space. "I thought I made it clear, we're not. I'm not here about the maintenance job." Tom interrupted. His voice was tired, defeated. "I heard you might need someone for cleaning. After hours. I can do that." Derek crossed his arms, leaning back, savoring this. "Cleaning? Really? That's what you want? It's work. I need it." Derek looked him up and down again, that same contemptuous scan. "You know what? Yeah, we do need someone. $8 an hour, 3 nights a week. You'd be mopping floors, taking out trash, cleaning bathrooms. Think your old bones can handle that?" Tom's jaw clenched so hard, his teeth hurt, but he nodded. "I can handle it." "All right then, you start tonight. Be here at 8 p.m. sharp. Don't be late, and listen." Derek leaned forward, his voice dropping to something mean and quiet. "Don't touch anything except your cleaning supplies. These bikes cost more than you'll make in a year, more than you're worth. You get me?" Tom forced himself to nod. "I get you." "Great. Now get out of here. Until then, you're making the place look bad." Tom left without another word. As he walked away, he heard Derek laughing with the other employee. Their voices carried through the glass doors. "Did you see his face? Dude's probably desperate enough to work for free." Tom kept walking, kept his head up, kept whatever dignity he had left, even though it felt like the only thing preventing him from disappearing entirely. Same night, 8 p.m. The night shift Tom showed up at exactly 8 o'clock. The center was closed now, empty except for security lights casting long shadows across the showroom floor. A young woman, different from Derek, thankfully, let him in and led him to a supply closet. "Everything's in here," she said without really looking at him. "Mop, bucket, cleaning solution, trash bags. The bathrooms are in the back. Just make sure everything's clean before you lock up. Leave the key under the mat when you're done." Then she left, and Tom was alone. He stood in the supply closet for a moment, looking at the mop and bucket. 32 years he'd run his own business. 32 years of skilled work, of helping people, of being someone who mattered. And now he was here, 88 years old, mopping floors in the building that replaced his life's work. He filled the bucket with hot water and soap, watching the suds rise. Then he pushed the mop cart out onto the showroom floor, and got to work. The work was brutal. Bending over the mop sent pain shooting through his back. Pushing it across the wide floor made his hips scream. Wringing it out cramped his arthritic hands. Every movement hurt. Every minute felt like an hour. But Tom worked methodically, systematically. He'd always been that way. If you were going to do something, you did it right. Even this. Even now. As he mopped, he looked around at the bicycles lining the walls. Expensive machines. Electric motors. Carbon fiber. Digital displays showing speed and distance and calories burned. Everything was sleek and modern, and completely divorced from the simple mechanical beauty of the bikes he used to fix. But underneath all the technology, they were still just bicycles. 2 wheels, a chain, pedals. The basics never changed, no matter how much you dressed them up. Tom was mopping near the back display area when he noticed something. One of the electric bikes, white frame, probably cost $8,000 or $9,000, had a front wheel that wasn't quite right. Not obviously wrong, just slightly off. The alignment was skewed maybe 2 or 3 degrees. Most people wouldn't notice, but Tom saw it immediately. In a few months that misalignment would cause uneven tire wear, would throw off the ride quality, would lead to bigger problems. It was such an easy fix, 90 seconds with the right wrench. Tom looked around. Nobody was here. He'd been explicitly told not to touch the bikes. Derek had made that very clear. But his hands were already moving. 32 years of instinct are hard to override. He couldn't just walk past something broken without fixing it. It wasn't in him. He set down the mop and walked to the tool area. Everything was organized perfectly. Expensive tools arranged by type and size on a pegboard wall. He selected what he needed and returned to the bike. Working carefully, quietly, he loosened the appropriate bolts. His shaking hands steadied as they always did when he was working. He adjusted the wheel alignment with the practiced touch of 50 years of experience. He tightened everything back up, checking twice to make sure it was perfect. There, better. The bike would ride true now. He put the tool back exactly where he'd found it, and returned to mopping. Nobody would know. It would just be one small thing fixed in a world full of broken things. Tom finished the cleaning around 10:30. Every surface gleamed. Every trash can was empty and relined. The bathrooms were spotless. Despite everything, despite the humiliation, despite the pain, despite the insulting pay, he'd done good work. He locked up, left the key under the mat like he'd been told, and started the long walk home. It was cold now, properly cold. His breath came out in visible clouds. His thin coat did almost nothing against the wind. The walk would take an hour, maybe more with his bad hip. He couldn't afford bus fare. $24 for tonight's work, $72 after 3 nights, just enough to make rent with a few dollars left over. Each step was agony, but Tom kept moving, one foot in front of the other, because stopping meant giving up. And he wasn't ready to give up, not yet. He didn't know that the wheel he'd fixed would be noticed. Didn't know that cameras had caught him touching the display bike. Didn't know that his small act of instinctive kindness would be used against him. Sometimes the world punishes you for caring. Sometimes being good gets you in trouble. Tom would learn that lesson in 3 days. 3 days later, evening, Tom had worked 3 cleaning shifts. 3 nights of pain and humiliation and back-breaking work for $24 a night, $72 total. Not much, but enough to make rent, enough to survive another month. On what was supposed to be his 4th shift, Tom arrived at 8 p.m. as usual. But when he walked through the doors, Derek was still there, and he wasn't alone. Standing next to him was an older man, maybe 50, wearing an expensive suit, arms crossed, expression cold. His name tag read Frank Morrison, Operations Manager. Tom's stomach dropped. Something was wrong. There he is, Derek said, pointing at Tom with barely concealed satisfaction. That's the guy. Frank looked at Tom with flat, assessing eyes. Sir, 3 nights ago were you working alone in this facility? Yes, sir. I was cleaning. And did you touch any of the display bicycles? Specifically the white electric model near the back wall. Tom felt trapped. He could lie, but he'd never been good at that. Yes, sir. The front wheel was misaligned. I noticed it while I was mopping.
It would have caused problems, so I fixed it. Took maybe 2 minutes. I didn't damage. You touched a bicycle worth $9,000 without authorization, Frank interrupted. His voice was hard-clipped. You were explicitly instructed not to touch any of the merchandise. That constitutes a serious violation of your employment terms and grounds for immediate termination. But I was helping, Tom said, hearing the desperation in his own voice and hating it. I was making it better. The bike's perfect now. I didn't hurt anything. We didn't hire you to fix bikes, Frank said coldly. We hired you to push a mop, that's all. You overstepped. You're done. Leave. Please. The word came out before Tom could stop it. I need this job. I'm short on rent. I didn't damage anything. The bike works better now than it did before. I was just, you don't seem to understand your position here, Derek interjected, that cruel smile spreading across his face. You're not a mechanic. You're not a technician. You're just a janitor. An old slow janitor who can barely walk. Honestly, we're doing you a favor. You probably shouldn't even be working at your age. Just go home, retire, get out of the way, and let people who actually matter do their jobs. The words hit like fists. Useless. Get out of the way. People who actually matter. Tom stood there, hands trembling, not from arthritis now, but from rage and shame and heartbreak so profound, it felt like drowning. He'd spent 88 years being useful, helping people, fixing things, making the world a little better, one bicycle at a time. And now he was useless, obsolete, trash. Leave now, Frank said, before I call security. Tom wanted to defend himself, wanted to tell them about his shop, about the thousands of people he'd helped, about Clara and kindness, and the belief that good work mattered. Wanted to make them see that he was more than what they thought, that his life had meant something. But what was the point? They'd already decided. Tom turned and walked toward the exit. Each step felt like walking through concrete. His chest felt tight, his vision blurred. He could barely breathe. He was almost to the door when he heard Derek say to Frank, just loud enough to make sure Tom heard, "These old people, man, they seriously need to accept when they're done, and just get out of the way. Make room for people who actually contribute something." Tom stopped. His hand was on the door handle. Every muscle in his body tensed. For one long moment he stood there frozen between staying and leaving, between defending himself and accepting defeat. Then he pushed through the door and stepped out into the cold night air. Behind him, through the glass, he could see Derek and Frank laughing, already forgetting he existed. Tom walked into the darkness, into the cold, into a world that had decided men like him were worth less than nothing. And for the first time in his long life, Tom Miller wondered if maybe they were right. 1 week later, afternoon, the grand opening. The rain had stopped sometime during the night. Tom woke up on a bench in Riverside Park, his body stiff and aching, his coat soaked through. He'd lost his apartment 3 days ago. The landlord had changed the locks while he was at the soup kitchen. Everything he owned, which wasn't much, was gone now. Taken, thrown out, disappeared. He'd spent the last 3 nights outside. The shelter was full. They always were this time of year when the temperature dropped. Tom had tried the churches, the community centers, the places that sometimes had floor space or a cot. Nothing. No room. Sorry. Try tomorrow. So he slept on benches when he could, in doorways when he couldn't, anywhere the police wouldn't roust him. His body was breaking down. He could feel it. The pain in his hip was constant now, a dull roar that never stopped. His hands shook so badly he could barely hold anything. His cough had gotten worse, deep and wet, the kind that made people move away from you on the sidewalk. He couldn't remember the last time he'd eaten a full meal. Yesterday he'd found half a sandwich in a trash can outside a deli. 2 days ago someone at the soup kitchen had given him an apple. This was how it ended. He thought, not with dignity or peace or surrounded by people who loved you, just alone, cold, forgotten, your life reduced to where you could sleep and when you could eat and how long you could keep moving before your body finally gave up. Tom pulled himself upright on the bench, every joint screaming in protest. The morning sun was breaking through the clouds, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, beautiful, indifferent. He needed to move, needed to find somewhere warm. The library opened at 9.
That was 2 hours away. He could walk slow, maybe find a coffee shop that would let him sit for a while if he bought the cheapest thing on the menu. He had $1.37 in his pocket, last of his money, last of everything. Tom stood up, testing his weight on his bad hip. The pain was sharp, immediate. He gritted his teeth and took a step, then another, started walking. He didn't have a destination. When you're homeless, everywhere is the same. You're just trying to exist without anyone noticing you exist. Trying to take up as little space as possible in a world that's already decided you're taking up too much. He found himself walking toward Henderson Street. He didn't plan it. His feet just took him there, following some old instinct or memory. Some part of him that remembered when he used to matter, when he used to have a place in the world. When he turned the corner onto Henderson, Tom saw the crowd. Lots of people. News vans, balloons, a banner stretched across the Evans Cycles and Care Center, grand opening today. 2 p.m. right, he'd seen the advertisements. Big event, the mayor would be there. Local business leaders, all the important people celebrating this new addition to the neighborhood, this symbol of progress and prosperity. Tom should leave. This wasn't for him. These weren't his people. He was just a homeless man now, and homeless men didn't belong at ribbon-cutting ceremonies for luxury cycling centers. But his feet kept moving forward, not toward the event, just close enough to watch from a distance. Close enough to see the building one more time, to stand near the place his shop used to be. He found a spot across the street, partially hidden by a bus stop shelter. From here he could see everything without being seen. That's how homeless people learn to survive, by becoming invisible. The crowd was growing. Expensive cars pulled up. People in suits and dresses stepped out, all smiles and handshakes. Cameras flashed. Someone was setting up a microphone and speakers. Tom watched it all from the shadows, feeling like a ghost at his own funeral. A black SUV pulled up to the curb. Sleek, new, the kind of car that cost more than Tom had made in 5 years. The back door opened and a man stepped out. Tall, early 30s, wearing a dark suit that fit perfectly. Strong jawline, confident posture. The kind of man who looked like success, like the future, like everything this neighborhood was supposed to become. The crowd responded to him immediately. People moved forward. Hands reached out. Cameras turned in his direction. He smiled and waved, comfortable with the attention, like he was born for it. This must be Charlie Evans, the owner, the man whose name was on the building. Tom studied him from across the street. There was something about the way he moved, something familiar. But Tom's mind was foggy from hunger, and cold and exhaustion. Everything felt distant, like watching the world through dirty glass. The ceremony started. The mayor gave a speech about economic development and community investment. A city councilwoman talked about job creation and opportunity. Everyone said words that sounded good but meant nothing to people like Tom. People who lived in the cracks these shiny new developments created. Then Charlie Evans stepped up to the microphone. "Thank you all for coming," he said. His voice carried across the street, clear and strong. "Today we're not just opening a business, we're opening doors." Tom felt something stir. The voice, something about it. "This center isn't just about bicycles," Charlie continued. "It's about second chances. It's about believing that everyone, regardless of age, regardless of circumstances, regardless of what they've been through, deserves dignity, deserves respect, deserves help when they need it." The crowd applauded. Charlie waited for it to quiet down. "I grew up not far from here," he said, his voice taking on something more personal. "My mom worked 2 jobs just to keep us fed. We struggled, we barely made it sometimes. There were days I wasn't sure we'd make it at all." Tom's heart beat a little faster. Something about this felt important, felt real. "But someone helped me once," Charlie said. "When I really needed it, a stranger who had every reason to ignore me but didn't. Someone who saw a scared kid with a broken bike and ruined deliveries in the middle of a storm, and instead of walking away he stopped. He fixed my bike. He gave me his food. He treated me like I mattered when everything in my life was telling me I didn't." Tom's breath caught in his chest. "I never forgot that day," Charlie continued. "I never forgot him, and I built this place, built everything I've done to honor what he taught me. That kindness matters, that seeing people matters. That one small act of grace can change a life." Tom's hands were shaking, not from arthritis, from recognition, from memory. from something impossible trying to break through the fog of hunger and exhaustion. "I named this center after my family," Charlie said. "But really it belongs to him. The man who showed me what it means to be human. I've been looking for him for years. His shop is gone now. I couldn't find him anywhere. But wherever he is," Charlie's voice broke slightly. He looked out at the crowd, and Tom saw his eyes were wet. "Wherever you are, Tom Miller, thank you. This is all because of you." Tom's knees buckled. He grabbed the bus shelter to keep from falling. Tom Miller, his name. This man had said his name. Tom stared across the street at Charlie Evans, and suddenly he wasn't seeing a successful man in an expensive suit anymore. He was seeing a skinny 12-year-old boy in the rain. Brown eyes wide and scared, scraped hands, torn jeans, a delivery bag full of ruined food, a voice that cracked when he said thank you. "I'm gonna remember this. When I grow up, when I have money, when I can do something that matters, I'm gonna help people, just like you helped me. I promise." The boy had kept his promise. 15 years, and the boy had remembered, had kept his word, had built something beautiful because of one moment in a storm when an old man had done what felt right. Tom tried to move but couldn't. His legs wouldn't work. His chest felt too tight. Tears streamed down his weathered face, warm against his cold skin. Across the street, Charlie cut the ribbon. The crowd applauded and started flowing into the building. The ceremony was over. People would look at bikes, drink champagne, talk about the future. Tom stood in his hiding spot, invisible to everyone, trying to process what he'd just heard. Part of him wanted to walk away. He was homeless now, broken. What could he possibly say to this man who'd become so successful? How could he show his face looking like this, smelling like this, being like this? But another part of him, the part that remembered Clara, that remembered fixing things, that remembered believing your work mattered even when you couldn't see the results, that part pulled him forward. Before he could talk himself out of it, Tom crossed the street. Each step was agony. His hips screamed. His whole body shook. He looked like exactly what he was, a homeless man shambling toward a celebration where he didn't belong. He reached the entrance. People were still going inside, talking and laughing. Tom stood at the edge, unsure. A young staff member noticed him, started to move forward with that look security people get when they're about to remove an undesirable. Then Tom saw Derek. The assistant manager was standing near the reception desk, talking to guests. When he spotted Tom, his face went through several expressions: surprise, then recognition, then fury. Derek excused himself and walked over fast, grabbing Tom's arm hard. "What are you doing here?" he hissed, pulling Tom back toward the door. "I told you to stay away. You can't just let him go." The voice cut through everything, quiet but commanding. Everyone nearby stopped talking. Charlie Evans stood 15 feet away, staring at Tom. His face had gone pale. His eyes were locked on Tom's face like he was seeing a ghost. "Mr. Evans, this man was fired for..." Derek started. "I said let him go." Charlie's voice was ice. Derek's hand dropped immediately. Charlie walked forward slowly, like he was afraid Tom might disappear if he moved too fast. He stopped 5 feet away, studying Tom's face, the wrinkles, the white hair, the exhaustion, the poverty written in every line. "Who are you?" Charlie asked. His voice was barely above a whisper. Tom's mouth was dry. His voice came out rough, broken. "Nobody. I'm nobody." "That's not true." Charlie took another step closer. "I know your face." His eyes widened. "What's your name?" Tom swallowed hard. Tom Miller." The reaction was immediate. Charlie's hand went to his mouth. His eyes filled with tears. He made a sound, half laugh, half sob, and closed the distance between them. "Oh my God," Charlie breathed. "Oh my God, it's really you." People were gathering now, sensing something important happening. Cameras turned their direction. The mayor stopped mid-conversation. Charlie looked at Derek, and his expression went from emotion to fury in a heartbeat. "You fired him." Derek shifted uncomfortably. "Sir, he violated protocol. He touched merchandise without..." "He's Tom Miller," Charlie said, his voice rising. "Do you understand who this is? This man is the reason any of this exists. The reason I'm standing here. The reason this center was built." He turned back to Tom, and now people were definitely watching. The room had gone quiet.
15 years ago, Charlie said, loud enough for everyone to hear. I was 12 years old making deliveries in a storm because my family needed money. I crashed, lost all the food, broke the bike, thought my life was over. His voice broke, and this man, right here, he stopped. In the rain, he didn't know me, didn't owe me anything, but he fixed my bike. He gave me his food. He treated me with respect and dignity when I felt like the world had decided I was worth nothing. Tears were running down Charlie's face now. He didn't try to hide them. I told him that day that I'd remember, that when I grew up I'd help people like he helped me. And I kept that promise. Everything I've built, Phoenix Outreach, the mobile medical units, this center, it's all because of him. It's all because Tom Miller showed a scared kid that kindness exists. He looked at Derek, his voice going cold again. And you fired him. You're done. Security will escort you out. Derek's face went white. But Mr. Evans, now, 2 security guards appeared. Derek left without another word, shoulders hunched, shame radiating off him. Charlie turned back to Tom, and his expression softened. I've been looking for you for so long. Your shop was gone. I couldn't find you anywhere. I thought. He couldn't finish. Tom finally found his voice. I'm sorry you had to see me like this. I'm not I used to be. You're exactly who you've always been, Charlie said firmly. The man who taught me what matters. He reached out and took Tom's hands, cold, shaking, scarred from decades of work, held them gently. I owe you everything, Charlie said, and I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to repay that debt. Starting now. Tom shook his head. You don't owe me anything. You made something of yourself. That's enough. That's more than enough. No. Charlie's grip tightened. It's not. You gave me dignity when I had none. Now it's my turn. He turned to address the crowd, still holding Tom's hands. Everyone, this is Tom Miller, the man this center was really built to honor. And from this moment on, he's not just a guest here, he's family. He'll have an apartment upstairs, rent-free, for as long as he needs it. He'll have whatever medical care he requires. And if he wants, Charlie looked back at Tom. If you want, I'd like you to help me run the community workshop. Teach people to fix bikes. Teach them what you taught me. Tom couldn't speak, couldn't process. This wasn't real. Things like this didn't happen to people like him. I can't, Tom started. You can, Charlie said gently. You saved my life. Let me save yours. The crowd erupted in applause, but Tom barely heard it. All he could hear was the sound of his own heartbeat, loud in his ears. All he could feel was Charlie's hands holding his, warm and real and solid. I thought I was done, Tom whispered. Thought the world didn't need me anymore. The world needs you, Charlie said. I need you. All the people we're going to help together. They need you. He pulled Tom into a hug, careful, gentle, like Tom was fragile. And Tom was fragile. But for the first time in months he didn't feel broken. Thank you, Tom said into Charlie's shoulder. Thank you for remembering. I'll never forget, Charlie said. Never. They stood there in the middle of the Evans Cycles and Care Center, surrounded by cameras and applause and celebration. An old man who'd thought his story was over. A young man who'd never forgotten where his story began. And in that moment, Tom Miller finally understood what Clara had been trying to tell him all along. Kindness doesn't die. It doesn't fade. It doesn't rust. It just waits. And when the time is right, when the world spins back around to where it needs to be, kindness comes home. Tom had spent 15 years thinking that moment in the rain was the end of something. A small good deed done and forgotten. Another day, another person helped. Another story that didn't matter. But it wasn't the end. It was a seed, and seeds take time to grow. Now, standing in the place where his shop used to be, held up by the man that scared boy had become, Tom finally saw the harvest. And it was beautiful. 6 months later, morning, Miller Evans Community Center. Tom Miller unlocked the workshop door at 7 a.m. Same as he'd done for 40 years. But everything else was different now. His hands were steadier. The medication Charlie's doctors had prescribed was working. His hip didn't hurt as much. They'd done the surgery, and physical therapy was helping. He'd gained 20 pounds, his face fuller, his eyes brighter. He lived in a small apartment upstairs, clean, warm, with a kitchen and a real bed, and photographs of Clara on the walls. But more than any of that, he had purpose again. The workshop took up the back third of the center. Workbenches lined the walls, tools hung on pegboards, organized, accessible, familiar. Bicycles, in various states of repair, waited on stands. Everything Tom needed to do what he'd been born to do, fix things. But it wasn't just about the bikes anymore. 3 times a week people came to learn. Young people, old people, people who'd never held a wrench before, people who'd lost their jobs and needed new skills, people who just wanted to understand how things work. Tom taught them. Not just the mechanics, though he taught that too, but the philosophy that fixing things mattered, that taking care of what you had was noble work, that helping others was never wasted, even when you couldn't see the results. Kindness is the only thing that doesn't rust, he'd tell them, pointing to the plaque Charlie had installed near the door. Clara's words preserved in brass. This morning a teenage girl named Maria was already waiting when Tom arrived. She had a broken bicycle and determination in her eyes that reminded him of someone. "Morning, Mr. Miller," she said. "Morning, Maria, let's see what we've got." They walked to the workshop together, and Tom felt that old familiar satisfaction. The good kind of tired that comes from work that matters. Charlie stopped by around 9, like he did most days. They worked side by side for an hour, talking about everything and nothing. They'd become family, not by blood, but by something stronger. "You know what I realized," Charlie said, adjusting a brake cable. "That day you helped me. You didn't just fix my bike, you fixed my whole life." Tom smiled. "You fixed your own life, son. I just reminded you it was worth fixing." "My mom wants to meet you," Charlie said. "She's been asking every week, says she needs to thank the man who saved her boy. Tell her she raised a good son." "That's thanks enough." They worked in comfortable silence. Through the window Tom could see the city waking up. The same city that had forgotten him. But he wasn't forgotten anymore. Not because he'd become rich or famous. He was neither. But because one person had remembered. One person had cared enough to look back and say thank you. One person had proven that the seeds you plant in the rain can grow into forests. "Tom," Charlie said. "Yeah, thank you for not giving up. For still being here when I found you." Tom set down his wrench and looked at the young man beside him. The scared boy had become someone strong, and good and kind. Someone changing the world, one person at a time. "Thank you for keeping your promise," Tom said. "For remembering, always," Charlie said. "Always." Outside the sun broke through the morning clouds, flooding the workshop with golden light. In that light, surrounded by tools and bicycles and purpose, Tom Miller finally felt at peace. He'd spent so many years thinking his work didn't matter. That he was just one old man fixing bikes, invisible to a world that didn't care. But he'd been wrong. His work had mattered. That moment in the rain had mattered. The kindness he'd shown a scared, hungry boy had traveled 15 years into the future and returned as salvation. Clara had been right all along. Kindness was the only thing that didn't rust. It was the only thing that lasted. Tom picked up his wrench and got back to work, his heart full, his purpose clear. Each turn of each bolt was planting seeds he'd never see fully bloom. But someone would, someday, someone would. And that was enough. That was more than enough. That was everything.
Join us to share meaningful stories by hitting the like and subscribe buttons. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell to start your day with profound lessons and heartfelt empathy.